Some people's favorite aspect, and some people's most stressful, can be the character introduction right at the beginning of a campaign or one-shot. Now, the reason for this is because your character introduction can be seen as a sort of jumping off point for how you, as your character, are going to be interacting with the world that you and your friends at the table are going to be creating during your games. Now, you've finally made it to this point. Scheduling conflicts have been resolved, character concepts have been made, people have chosen their race, their class, their equipment, and their stats. You all sit down at the table, and the Dungeon Master begins setting the scene. Perhaps you're in a bar, and as he's describing everything, he finally gets to you and asks, what do we all see as we look at your character? Now, this is the moment where you get to take the spotlight and shine it directly onto your character. And this will be the first glimpse as to who your character is, as seen by the rest of the people who are playing at your table. So, what do you tell them? There are many different ways in which people initially perceive each other, and this means that the introduction is going to vary, sometimes wildly, from person to person at your table, as each of us see different aspects as being more important than others when we are first looking at another character. For some, the hairstyle that your character has and the type of clothing that they are wearing may be more important than anything else. And for others, the runes that are etched into the head of your hammer and the different equipment that you are adorned with can be the most important to them. Knowing that everybody holds certain details as more important than others can be a great help in how we craft our character introduction, so that we ensure that we pique the attention of the other players at our table and what they are most interested in, and also shed a light as to what we are most interested in when it comes to our own character. Alright. So we know that we need to include details that are important to the people at our table and that are important to us. So what might some of those details exactly be? Well, typically, the first thing that people notice upon visually seeing somebody for the first time is their stature. How tall are they? And what is their frame? Are they a 6'7" bulky tiefling? Or are they perhaps a slender halfling who is a little on the shorter side? Next, what race, gender, and features do they appear to possess? Do they, upon looking at them, appear to be a female high elf with a angular but strong masculine jaw structure? Now, what sort of defining characteristics might your character possess? These can be things such as scars, moles, birthmarks, burns, freckles. Perhaps you're playing a tiefling who has mismatched horns, one of them being a tight spiral like a mountain goat and the other one being more of a candy cane shape. Alright, for perhaps a lot of your favorite parts of character introduction, what sort of clothing is your character wearing? Are they dressed in noble clothing? Are they scantily clad in leathers that seem to be more adorned of tribalistic culture? And finally, the last portion of the physical introduction is what sort of equipment does your character possess? Do they have a large bag that is filled with all kinds of tools? Or are they just in a simple robe and a staff? The equipment that your character seems to possess can be a good insight for the other players at your table as to what sort of abilities your character might have. Okay, so we have most of the visual perception portions of your character introduction already out of the way. But now we can give perhaps a little bit of insight into what your character's personality may be. And a way we can do this is through aneurysms that may be on display upon your introduction. If we take our previous setting in a tavern or a bar, you can ask yourself, what is my character doing in this moment? Are they drinking profusely while laughing and joking around with the local hunters who are recalling the story of their latest kill? Or are they sitting in the corner, reading a book and taking down notes, alone? Along with displaying a little bit of your personality, we can also shed a little bit of light of what your character's mental state in the moment may be. Let's take our last example with the character gulping down every last drop from his tankard and slamming it back down on the table before letting out a large laugh as the hunter hits the climax of his story. And for a moment, you see he looks longingly down at the floorboards. A look of sadness crosses over his face, ever so briefly, before snapping back out of it, calling for another drink and regaling with the hunters around him. This can give a nice little glimmer into more complexity that your character may have other than just being this jovial character that they ran into in a bar. Now, of course, these are just suggestions, and by no means do you ever need to use all of these in one simple character introduction. It is actually probably more beneficial if you only use a couple of them, hand-selected to fit your character best. Decide what you find most interesting about your character, and really shed light on that aspect of your character when introducing them. This can really give a focus and attention to detail for the rest of your table as to what you want them to be paying attention to when it comes to your character. This can give a lot of focus to the other players at your table as to what may be important to you as the player and what may be important to your character. You may be on the more simple side like I am, and just like introducing the stature and all the equipment that your character is carrying on them, along with maybe a slight peek into their personality as they shrug away the tankard of ale and pull out their own little cup and their water skin, which they have filled with coffee to keep themselves nice and alert for whenever danger may arise. But for you, perhaps the medallion adorned around your character's neck with the symbol of their god and the purple dyed leathers that they are dressed in is the aspects of your character that you want to really put on display. And never forget that perception does not equal reality, especially when it comes to our fantasy role-playing games. Just because your character looks a certain way or is perceived a certain way does not mean that character has to feel that way. We want to foster good creative environments where we can have fun with our friends at the table and tell amazing stories. And never forget that. Rough to win.